Taming the High Cost of College, Episode 103.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello and welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we have a great interview with Travis Jennings. He is the owner of Debt Reduction, Inc., and he's going to talk to us a little bit about debt and family, credit card debt, and other issues that come up as we roll into college, and talk about how families can pay down that debt or pay off that debt as part of the college process. We're also going to talk a little bit about how much debt is reasonable for a student to take on. But before we get into that, I also have a Brad Recommends. And in Brad Recommends, I give you two strategies that families can use as far as either paying down debt with assets like bank accounts or investments, or refinancing debt into a mortgage or other lower cost loan. So as always, show notes are available at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com. And let's go ahead and jump into the Brad Recommends.
The latest tips, tricks, and tools you can use today. This is Brad Recommends on Taming the High Cost of College.
Today on Brad Recommends, I'm going to talk about two debt strategies that we can use in order to improve our college situation. The first would be consolidating our debt. For a lot of families that I work with, it may make sense early on in the college process to consolidate debt, perhaps using a new mortgage of some sort, either a new first mortgage, where we roll other debts into one big mortgage and then pay that off and stretch that over 30 years instead of maybe a 15-year or even 10-year. Or the other option is to use other assets to pay off the debt. And that may also make sense. So let's first talk about the paying off the debt. For financial aid purposes, a lot of families may qualify for more aid if they have less assets. So a family that has both assets and debt, it may make sense to pay down the debt with the assets. That may free up cash flow for college, and it may also improve your odds of qualifying for aid. So as an example, if you had two car loans and a mortgage and a credit card payment, and let's say that you owed $5,000 on each car, and there's $10,000 on the credit card, and you happen to have $30,000 or $40,000 in the bank, it may make sense to take the money out of the bank or out of another investment and pay off the credit cards, the car loans, and then just keep the mortgage. And that would afford perhaps creating additional cash flow. You lose two car payments, say $400 a month on times two car payments plus $200 a month going to the credit card. And now you have $1,000 a month of free cash flow available. And if you redirect that towards college, that may put you in a better situation, both on cash flow as well as on qualifying for more aid. Another situation that I've used quite often for people that have a lot of debt is refinancing their mortgage. So in a lot of cases, some families are very disciplined about paying and sometimes even paying extra on their mortgage because they really want their house paid off, but they may also have other debts that they've accrued over time. So again, the similar situation, you've got a mortgage, two car payments, credit cards. But let's say that the mortgage is down to $100,000 when the home value is $300,000. You may be able to go out and get a new first mortgage for $150,000 and then use that cash flow or use that cash to pay off your other debts. So then you pay off your credit cards, you pay off your car loans, and now you've got a new mortgage payment that might be slightly higher or may even be lower, and then you can redirect all the cash flow that was going towards debt into the college plan. Now, often when you talk to a mortgage broker, he's going to say things like, but if you go out and get a new mortgage, you're going to pay a lot in interest, which is true. If you put more money onto your mortgage, you're going to pay more interest on your mortgage. But hopefully you're also going to pay less interest on your car loans or on your credit cards. Also, where I see it being advantageous is if you leave things the way they are and you say, well, I'm going to get my house paid off in 10 years and I'm going to get the cars paid off and then all my debts will be gone and that's my goal. The challenge, of course, is when college comes along, you turn around and get new debts in the form of student loans. So sometimes you take on a plus loan or the student takes on some sort of private loan and the interest rate is substantially higher than what would be available had you looked at things like a mortgage or a second mortgage or other loan opportunities. So again, there's no right or wrong here, and not everybody should do the same thing. But again, it may make sense to pay off the other debts and stretch your mortgage to a 15 or 30 year and stretch out the payments so that you can avoid taking on further student loans. Now, the challenge with all these strategies is if you pay off credit cards or you buy down debt and that type of thing, is you need to be disciplined. And if you're going to use your home equity to pay off credit cards, if you go back out and you run up the credit cards because you feel like you've got free cash flow now because of the paid off credit cards and you put yourself right back into debt, well, then you didn't do yourself any favors. So along with this strategy, you need to have some discipline in order for it to actually pay off. If you pay off your credit cards and then you run them back up and you're right back to where you were prior, then you didn't do yourself any favor because now you have a big mortgage and you still owe on the credit cards. So you need to make sure that you are living within your budget and some of those things as well. And then it may make sense, again, to consolidate debt or to pay off debt as a strategy. All right, that ends Brad Recommends. Well, let's jump into the interview. All right, today I'm sitting down with Travis Jennings. He's the founder of Debt Reduction, Inc. Welcome, Travis.
Hey, they appreciate you having me on, Brad.
All right, well, before we jump into talking about debt and some of your area of expertise, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to do what you do?
Well, I started in the financial industry and being a wealth manager, investment advisor, and things of that sort, the traditional approach. And what I learned was that you get paid based on the amount of money that you move or manage. And obviously being a young, spry man, I wanted to make as much money as humanly possible and help as many people as possible. And so I kind of went upstream chasing the high net worth clients. As I got upstream, what I realized was, for me at least, it wasn't quite as rewarding as what I had hoped. Unfortunately, when you make a lot of money for somebody who has a lot more money, it's not the same level of reward. It wasn't quite what I had anticipated. And so I realized that I needed a shift in what I was doing. And I decided to begin creating systems and technology that could give the same education that's sold to the wealthy to the everyday individual. And so for the last couple of years, I've been building out systems that could help the everyday American gain access to the ever so important financial information that the top level advisors like yourself bring to the world.
So you get obviously involved based on your Debt Reduction Inc. I'm assuming it's, obviously you get involved in helping people and families with their debt issues. So can you give us an idea of what you're typically dealing with as far as, who is your typical customer and what do they look like as far as finances?
Well, I think we're trying to help the people that don't have a lot of advisors banging down their door and trying to help them out. I guess if I had to kind of put them into a box, and anybody who's trying to make more for themselves, that care about personal responsibility, that want to just, lead by example. They may have a kid in high school and have a mortgage payment that they're hoping to knock out. And, they see retirement coming down the road. And obviously you need more income if you're still in debt versus if you're debt free. And so what we try to do is we try to focus on the debt aspect, because I don't see a lot of people out running around teaching how to get out of those issues. So I would say anybody with a job that cares about personal finance and accountability.
Okay, so you're typically dealing with people that are juggling credit cards and or car loans and that type of thing?
Absolutely. I just don't know who out there is teaching them how to organize and structure their debts and then how to properly pay those down as effectively as possible. So I'm trying to put out the technology that can assist with that.
Right, absolutely. So I guess, let me tell you kind of a little backstory and then we can kind of talk our way through this. But a typical thing that I see is families that are rolling into college. So that maybe they've got one or two kids in high school and maybe one or two beyond that as far as, grade school or something. And they're rolling into college and they're pretty much feeling like all the money they earn is committed to, the mortgages and the car payments and the school fees and the dance lessons and whatever else is going on in their family. And when we start talking about, well, how are we going to pay for college? And they need to scrape together an extra $500 or $1,000 a month to make it really work, their eyes kind of look in shock and they go, well, how are we going to do that? So, and I think a large piece of that would be the fact that, again, a lot of families are rolling into college with one or two car payments and a big mortgage payment and a few credit cards that maybe are a little out of control. And they're doing okay in covering all their payments as it stands, but they can't squeeze college in as well. What are your thoughts on, what do you do about that, and what have you seen be effective?
Wow, that's a good one. I would say that everyone needs to understand that debt is a bad thing, and your personal finances have to be in order. And I think in order to understand how we've put ourselves in a situation like that, where we're struggling to come up with the money that we need to give our kids higher education, I think it's important that we look back and analyze kind of how we got into this mess. And to do so, I typically like to start with the story of, have you bought a car recently, Brad? I mean, have you been to a car lot in the last couple of years? Mm-hmm. I mean, the conversation used to be about the price of the car, but today it's more about the payment, right?
Right.
And so there has been a very clear shift in the way that people market to us and try to extract our dollars, right? And so this generation, these generations that are currently out, have been subjected to online marketing, television marketing, and they've realized that rather than buying based on assets, because very rarely do people have the assets to purchase, that they could attack somebody's income. And if they can consume our income, if they can convince us to purchase based on payments, then the details don't become quite as clear, right? They can play more games with the financing. And once that shift in habits has occurred, which I do believe has already happened, then we now buy based on payments. And what I have seen is that typically when someone has a car payment and that car is finally paid off, it's time for a new car because they're accustomed to making that car payment. The scariest part of all of that is because when you approach the very real and very important aspects of what you bring to the table with your college planning, you got to have some excess income to be able to do a lot of those strategies and implement a lot of those solutions. And those are more important than any other.
Right. Absolutely. So, and again, what a lot of people don't realize is your debts, as an example, don't show up on the financial aid forms, and your assets do. So I've seen situations where, you have $20,000, $50,000 in an account somewhere, but you also have $20,000, $50,000 of debt, and you're thinking that that's a wash. Then I don't have anything to report. And unfortunately, you do. You report the assets wherever the banker's investments are, but you don't bring up the debt. So I encourage a lot of families to really understand and kind of take hold of the debt and get it in order. Let's talk a little bit about on the backside too, because another big subject that comes up is student loans. Student loans, essentially, mom and dad can borrow to help pay for college on a formal student loan where it is specifically for college, or they could borrow, home equity, credit card, whatever else they would choose to do. And then the students can have debt as well, where they can get out and get student loans. As you're counseling people, what are you seeing as far as, graduates and how much debt they have and kind of the effects of that?
Geez. The results are all over the board. I try to stay as optimistic as possible, but unfortunately, I all too often see situations where you'll have the recently graduated attorney who has, upwards of $200,000 in student loan debts, and then they've just received their first job and it's not paying all that much money. In that situation, and in every situation where there's now a balance that needs to be paid, it's incredibly important that you understand that is a rabbit hole that goes fairly deep. And the education is there. It's just whether or not you choose to go find it. Because unfortunately, colleges and high schools and most local churches don't spend the time to teach this type of planning.
Right, exactly. So have you encountered situations where students are in debt or former students are in debt, and what have they done to solve the problem?
Well, there's definitely no quick fix that I have found. Most things in this world do take a little bit of elbow grease and hard work. The solutions that I recommend the most are of course, educational based. Once you understand what it is that you're doing, because the reality is nobody cares about your money more than you. But once you understand that and you receive the education that you need, I think that it's crucial that you get a written plan for obvious reasons, right? How do you build a house without a blueprint? The second aspect that you'd want to have is you'd want to understand, if it's okay, I'm going to plug an Albert Einstein quote. It's by far my favorite that I've ever received or heard. It said that the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. Those that understand it receive it, and those that do not pay it. Mm-hmm. So I would say that even though you have debt balances, it is important that we understand the effect of the interest that we are either paying or receiving. And so that if you take the application of the knowledge through a written plan and you can convert the debt into an asset, well, then the only thing left would be to automate it so that you can successfully transfer from a position of debt to a position of wealth.
Right. So what types of strategies, or where would we get this type of education if we're interested?
Absolutely. So our website obviously provides a lot of that education and information, which can be located at mydebtreductionblueprint.com. Dave Ramsey has programs and books that are available. Nelson Nash has a infinite banking concept that's very educational and informative. There are concepts like debt stacking and debt snowballs that are fantastic tools that you could utilize to assist in this. I think one thing that goes often overlooked is just the internet, YouTube. If you take any one of those concepts that I just mentioned and you were to place them into YouTube and just watch a handful of videos, see the education that's out there, discover for yourself, understand that it's not as shallow a pool as most, I believe, think.
Right. Absolutely. So as we're dealing with that, what is your opinion of things like bankruptcy or reorganization or debt consolidation? Where do those fit in compared to buckling down and paying it off over time?
I'm not a huge fan, right? I mean, if you look at specifically debt consolidation, what you're doing is you're taking a bunch of debts that you're paying interest on, and hopefully through the process you're consolidating them to reduce the payment that you're making, but you're still shifting debts to debts, right? It's essentially putting a Band-Aid on the problem. It's not actually fixing the behavioral finance aspect of the issue. So if somebody has a spending problem and they buy too much stuff on credit and now they have a bunch of credit cards and they consolidate it into one loan, well, the balance is still the balance and you're still paying interest. So I guess my issue with those is that it doesn't necessarily speak to the problems. And the problems are just the way that we understand finance and the way that we apply education to our own lives. Most people just don't think much about it at all.
Right. Okay. And then if we're trying to deal with debt on the front end again, if we're going back to the parent side of things. So if parents are dealing with debt and looking at college, what's your opinion about how much should or could be borrowed for college? Or is it, there's people out there that say, college is a complete sham. I guess I'm not one of them, where they say it's never worth the price anymore. And there's others that are out there that say, well, education for education's sake, and it's something you need to do. When you start looking at the debt that it creates, what are your thoughts on that?
I guess first and foremost, I would say that I would lean on people like yourself that have spent a lot of time acquiring designations in education that can help with that far better than I can. But if you do want my opinion on that, I would say that college is a very important piece. I'm raising 3 children myself. My oldest is 15 years old. He's a fantastic child. He's got a great mind, and I think that he's going to be fantastic. When he transitions from 12th grade on to college or 12th grade into the working world, I just have a really hard time believing that he's going to be ready to get out there, find his career, and be able to exit whatever job he takes fresh out of high school to go pursue his dreams in the future. I hate to bring it back to debt again, but what typically happens with the high schooler when he exits schooling and enters the workforce is they take whatever job they can get, right? Because they're 18 years old and they don't have a gang of options. Mm-hmm. So now they take that job, they're receiving that money. Well, they have to get to their job, so they typically will get a car depending on where they're located. They typically will want to get an apartment. These are all bills. And as you acquire bills, you have to have income to pay for those bills. So it puts you in this situation where you begin chaining yourself to your lifestyle. And if you're chaining yourself to your lifestyle, I think that it's very challenging to eventually exit that lifestyle and go pursue your dreams. So for me personally, I recommend college, not just for the educational aspect of it, but also because I think that it's almost like having a crutch, a bridge from being a child to an adult.
What I see a lot is where families are trying to justify college, is it worth it, and that type of thing, and they try and boil it down to a formula of, let's do the math and say, well, if I can get this, earn this much more money and all that type of thing. And I think, as you mentioned, you look at your son, and I think it's more a case by case. There is no college is worth it or not worth it, just based on the math. You have to look at the bigger picture. Now, what's your thought as far as, let's assume we have a situation where maybe the plan looks like we're going to have to borrow $25,000 or $30,000 for college to make it all come together for a particular student. Do you have any thoughts as far as who should borrow the money? Should it be the parents, the student, and why?
Yeah, call me old-fashioned, but I guess I believe that if somebody is literally trying to transition from a student in a position of dependence on their parents and they're trying to make their way in this world, I could probably make a case for either way, but my belief is that the child, I think that if we are trying to set an example and we're trying to teach our children that it's okay, you're in the big world now and we have to make our way, I think that it sets a poor example to take on at least too much of the debt. I think that the child should be exposed somewhat to the consequence of that decision. Because, what's the old term? You got skin in the game. It allows for better results. And I've seen, personally, my college experience, I saw that all over the place. The students that had their parents paying for everything, I don't know that they took it quite as serious. And of course, I'm stereotyping, but the general overall numbers of things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Well, you've given us a lot of great information, and I know you've got a website and other resources. Can you tell us where we can find them?
Absolutely. So the website is located at mydebtreductionblueprint.com. If you go to the .org site, there is a opt-in for a free video educational series. So that would be mydebtreductionblueprint.org. If you opt in, it's got 3 different videos that go over all of the myths of personal finance and debt consolidations. And I would recommend everybody take a part of that. Just watch it on their own time, gain the education, and do with it what you please.
All right. Well, we will put links to everything that was mentioned in the show notes for everyone, so you can obviously go to our website as well and get the information. I appreciate it. Any parting thoughts as far as other ideas for parents?
I would just say stay on this podcast. I think that the great work that he's doing, I don't know if you guys are aware, but Brad has some very high credentials. And I think that it's important that when somebody has that much work and knowledge gathered and they're willing to just give it away, I don't know that there's much more of a great thing that we can do as an American other than just share education. And I just want to commend you for what you do. I really appreciate what you're doing for society.
Well, thank you for the kind words. All right, well, we're going to wrap it up today. Thank you, Travis, and we'll stay in touch.
All right, thank you very much, Brad.
All right, that was a great interview with Travis. Hopefully you have a better handle on what's going on with debt and how there's help out there. You can go to his website and learn more about so there's some strategies out there to reduce your debt. And as part of your college process, a lot of times getting your debt in control is a great way to help make college more affordable. As always, show notes are available at tamingthehighcostofcollege/103, which is the 103rd episode. I appreciate you listening, and we will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research. and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns two companies, Baldrige Wealth Management and Baldrige College Solutions. The Baldrige companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.